All right, well, let's get rolling here. So, want to welcome everybody that's joining us this evening. This is the fourth, and at least for FFI Online Season 2, fourth and final episode of Brian O'Keefe. And Brian, I just want to thank you, man. It's been awesome to have you on. We've gotten so much great feedback. I know you've gotten a lot of great feedback too.
Thank you.
I am Patrick Berry. I'm the president and CEO of Fly Fishers International. We want to welcome you to Fly Fishers International online series, bringing you casting, tying, global travel, and of course, Brian O'Keefe. Just want to thank all of our members who make this possible. And I do know that we've had some folks when I've said, hey, listen, if you like what you see, make sure you support us by becoming a member of Fly Fishers International. And some folks have done that. So we just want to thank you so we can keep doing this. And we're looking forward to getting back to it next year with season 3. So I know you've got a great program on catching big trout. And I do not want to cut into that, but I just do want to do a quick introduction. Brian, who has done, Brian O'Keefe, almost everything imaginable within the fly fishing industry, from Shop Joey to guide to author to magazine publisher to photographer who's had photos in almost everything imaginable. I can let you round out your resume, but basically Brian O'Keefe, household name fly fishing guy, and really a great supporter of Fly Fishers International. So really appreciate that. And also one reason that I'm excited to have you on, Brian, is I know that you like to get invited to clubs and TU chapters and other organizations to have you do these kinds of presentations for them in person. So not only if you like what you see, it'd be great if you could join Fly Fishers International, but also invite Brian along. Let him give one of his great presentations and then take him to some of the best local fishing holes. So one last thing too is that we will love to get your questions. We usually wait until the end because we found out, even I have, that Brian usually gets to them at some point during the presentation. So use the Q&A box for questions. So without further ado, Brian, thank you, buddy. Really appreciate it.
All right, Patrick. Well, thank you so much. It's been really fun. I'm going to hit share my screen, get this thing up and running. Usually just takes a couple seconds and a little luck. I'm at the couple second stage. And here we go. I don't know why there's that little delay, but there always is. But anyway, hey, good things come to those who wait, right?
That's right.
Did I mention that both big Oregon colleges are in the Sweet 16, Oregon and Oregon State?
Oh, man.
Spokane, Washington, Gonzaga Bulldogs are undefeated. Come on, this is good stuff.
You're killing me because my my home state, Maryland Terrapins, got the snot kicked out of them by Alabama last night.
Oh, the Turtles?
Tragic.
All right. It's so bad. Well, moving right along. Here we go. Okay, trout fishing around the West. I put this together because it's that time of year where we're itching to go. We've got the stuff, the trucks, campers, trailers, boats, gear. Still the very best trout fishing per dollar spent experience in the world is the United States. It's not expensive, has great variety, has big fish. So this is basically just to light a little fire under all of us to think about places to go and things to do this late spring, summer, and fall. I'm not going to drill down on each little spot into minutiae detail of how big of a hook you need to tie trico. It's going to be just general information. And a lot of this should be supported with, say, a road trip with some guiding, with some do-it-yourself fishing. But remember, DIY stands for do-it-yourself. And so that's why I'm not going to give away the farm, because half the fun of organizing a trip to Wyoming, Montana, Colorado, Idaho, Oregon, etc., is getting you and your friends or family together and planning a trip and getting it done and doing the research. I'm available, for a question or two. You'll see my email at the end. But I'm not your trip planner, but I encourage everyone to go and explore and and take those fly rods we have and get after it. But anyway, it's not going to be minutia detail, Latin names. It's going to be big overall fun stuff. So I'm going to start in Wyoming. And I think Wyoming might be, the New Zealand, Chile, Argentina of the United States, because it's got just unbelievable big fish trout fishing. Hey, Patrick, that upper right, left-hand corner, ever seen a PMD take a nap on the water? Yeah, that's pretty cool. So we got big fish, grand scenery, easy to get around, low population, and here's Wyoming. So let me put my arrow out here. So there's the geographic center of Wyoming. All these rivers, boom, to the northeast, straight to the north, out to the northwest, southwest, and then the big river systems. The North Platte does this big U-turn in Wyoming. We've got this area down here for the Green River. We've got over here Jackson, and then the Snake River coming out, the only system and watershed that goes to the Pacific Ocean. Everything else goes out to the Missouri, the Mississippi, and Gulf of Mexico. Now look at this, Big Horn up here, the Wind River Range. You can't go too far without hitting a pretty major watershed. So, I don't know. I've thought about living in Wyoming, but they have long winters there. So anyway, here's great highways. You can put the pedal to the metal, you can get around. There's the exact geographic center of Wyoming, and just everything, any direction. It doesn't fade out or fade in like Montana has great, then it fades in the east, and etc. But Wyoming's just got it going on everywhere. Sorry, wrong way. Now, if I'm thinking about big trout in Wyoming, I think I would just search Instagram and Facebook and do some internet searches for towns, and then just put in fly fishing, Casper, Wyoming, fly fishing, Sheridan, blah, blah, blah. And all this stuff comes up, and pretty soon you go, wow, is that Jurassic Lake? No, that's Wyoming. This is unbelievable. And just start following some of these people, see who you like, and just let it go from there. There's a lot of water. There's a lot of outfitters. There's a lot of campgrounds. There's good places to go fish on your own. Just better doing the research. So here's a very popular area. It's very well known, the Miracle Mile. It's on the North Platte. And here it says, you are here. Well, I wish I was. And here's this little island cluster. And I'll show you a couple of pictures from these islands. And right by that bridge, I'll show you some neat fishing. It's easy, fun, accessible, free campground. That's just kind of Wyoming. It's big, but there's lots to do, and it's got great access. So this was a road trip a few years ago. Camped right in those islands. I mean, you're 50 feet from rising trout. You can just go up and down the fish like crazy. That's the Miracle Mile. Here's some of those islands again. If that just doesn't say perfect trout habitat, man, you've got all the bugs, you've got big fish, and just I don't see any people. So that's kind of interesting. So there's that bridge I pointed out. So there's the bridge. So you pull off, you walk down under the bridge, there's rising trout in the 14 to 19 inch range, big and huge and fat, every evening on Elkhart Cast in the summer. This would be August. But man, that's just fantastic. And lots of boulder streams, canyon country. This is why you don't go to Wyoming with 7 days and say, yeah, I fished Wyoming. No, you fished a tiny little bit of it. Wyoming would take a minimum of about 200 days of fishing to feel like you're getting kind of a handle on it. It's just so much there. And why the fish get big: crayfish, caddis, stoneflies. They eat a lot of other fish. And it's just a great, amount of insect life and other fish and crayfish. Keep these things fat. Here's a neat spot, the Wind River, probably the hardest bank fishing in the world. I highly recommend a drift boat trip with a local guide. But for instance, the Wind River Canyon, whitewater and fly fishing, they're on the Wind River Indian Reservation, so they're about the only concessionaire in this area. So, but anyway, that was like, takes you 2 seconds to type in Wyoming fly fishing or Wind River, blah, blah, blah. And up it comes. And look at that beautiful lodge on the river, and then these giant trout. So because it's on the reservation, you can't launch your own boat. But there is some bank fishing available if you're like a rugby player. And it's tough. I'll show you why. See those rocks? It's all bouldery like that. There's no beautiful gravel bars and, Spring Creek type stuff. It's very, very physical. And for middle-aged, younger, semi-athletic anglers, it's fine. But there's a lot of rock hopping and even slight rock climbing to get around. The reward is big rainbows, big browns, and some cutthroats. Hoppers, streamers, some match the hatch, dry fly fishing, depending on the time of year. And I've yet to really see where are the small fish in the Wind River. So there's the banks, they're steep and bouldery. And there's from Google Earth looking down. So you have this really incredible canyon and a fast freestone river that caters to anybody. If you're a streamer junkie, you'll love it. If you want to spot fish and sneak them with hoppers, you've got that. But you have to jump around from these rocks. There's a few rattlesnakes. And so I'm saying if you're tentative with balance or something like that, don't do it. I think the next time I'm fishing, I'm going to wear my bike helmet. It's pretty nasty, but the big fish are kind of worth it. There you go. Big streamers. I particularly like those brown-orange combinations, more of a crayfish coloration. The fly shops are great because, yeah, there's tricos, but most of the time you can fish 3X and these big, huge attractor dry flies, hopper type patterns, and streamers. And you need an Indian reservation license, and you budget for it. It's not that big a deal. So for me, it's $30 a day, and if I'm going to be there for 5 or 6 days, I'll just buy the non-resident annual at $125 and just chalk it up. Money well spent, day in, day out. Probably gonna get my big fish fix, for $125. The Upper Wind River's got this amazing geology all around you, these layers and strata of rock and lava and sediment. It's just very, very, very interesting. This is a float trip I did with the Wind River Canyon and fly fishing guides. And, we were the first float down this stretch after high water, and it cleared up, and I was there at just the right time. It was just amazing, just epic scenery and beautiful fish. See, I'm going faster, Patrick. Are you happy? Because you know me, I'll just go on forever. Anyway, you got hoppers, stoneflies, all the mayflies, all the caddis. It's just one of those great western rivers that has it all. And you can fish, kind of big stuff, which is more relaxing and cover a lot of water. Because as soon as you get into small flies, you're usually moving more slow, taking each rising fish as an individual target. 6X, perfect everything. Sometimes on the Wind River, you can put on a chubby and just drift and cast and laugh and have fun. The beautiful countryside of Wyoming. And then the smaller streams and in the boonies. And so I'm going to go back to that original map because all these are named, there's the Bighorn, and here's the North Platte. These are great. The Green River, the Snake, the Yellowstone. These are great household names. But what about all these other ones that don't have a name on them? There's a little teeny one right there. What are all those? Those are all great trout streams. And they probably have a dirt road or somewhere to get up near them by either BLM or Forest Service. And that is very much worth exploring. You have to have a little time on your hand. And because you are exploring, you're going to have downtime. You're going to have half of your time probably be getting access, figuring out where to be and when. But the reward is great. Again, sometimes you need a tribal license. Make sure you all do that. Obey the signs. But most of those little streams out there have great hatches, blueing olives and drakes and PMDs. Look at the bugs on the water. This is a combo hatch of bluing olives and caddis of all things. It was kind of crazy. And some tricos thrown in. You can see the tricos above this angler. He's so interested in watching them, it's more fun than catching fish. But having a little selection of all your flies, from the small ones, the tricos, through the blue wing olives, into PMDs, then you get into some drakes, and then have your caddis and your stonefly, and then your streamer boxes. It's just great fun. You might be switching back and forth to 3 or 4 of those at any given day. Here's another complex hatch, several varieties. This would wipe out the windshield of your truck going 70 in 10 seconds. It's just a splatter fest, and the fish are going nuts. And a lot of times you won't see a whole lot of people in those smaller streams, out of the way places. How do you know they're any good? You just go. You worked all your life, maybe you're retired and you got a good truck, just go and explore. And if you're not retired yet, well, call in sick. Love the tricos and the small betas. It's just so much fun to catch big fish with those techniques. If you know that spot, don't tell anybody. It's so cool. And the thing about Wyoming Game and Fish does probably as much or more on sharing logistics and information on their website. And I could go on about it forever, but look at that, public access, boating, everything is on here, and you dive into it, you get on a watershed, it's got places you click on for boat ramps, for riverside parking, for restrooms, etc. They have done an amazing job, and you can kind of dial in a float trip by knowing the mileage on between boat ramps, and now you just find a shuttle, or you're gonna go with a guide, and you know where you're gonna meet them. It's just really great information. They break down these little zones per watershed and talks about each individual spots. Those little red diamonds are put-ins and takeouts, so you can map it out, and it gives you the mileage: 10 miles, 16, 5 miles, 18 miles. Really great stuff. How many days do you have to fish? Gives you all these different options. It's really a well done website. It's even more than a website. It's like a lifetime of information. There's also great books on Wyoming and Montana and other places. Let's just drop down over to Colorado, which has a huge fly fishing community, mainly because it's good and they have so many rivers and some lakes. There's the state. So you got Denver, kind of upper middle. To the east, honestly, I don't know a whole lot, but to the west, it's top to bottom, from down at Durango, then all the way up to Walden, and in between, you've got the Colorado River, the Gunnison River, the Dolores. There's fishing around Vail. There's fishing in every one of those dots. There's good fishing, and there's a lot of anglers in Colorado because it's good, it's fun, it's great, has great scenery. But you just have to wander back a little farther than everybody else, and you can have lots of that great stuff all to yourself. So the Taylor River is a fun place near Crested Butte, one of my favorite towns in Colorado. And Freestone Stream, it's a tailwater, but bouldery, has rapids and pools, lots of pocket water, and it grows nice fish. And you can see a tiny little fly, this nice brown. And this pocket water is really fun. Every good little deep spot will have several fish, and there's lots of hatches. It's got all the mayflies, it's got caddis, it's got some stones, so everything's popping. You'll see something almost every day. It's just starting to get wound up right now this time of year. So here's just a long stretch of pocket water. You just take your time, pick your way through every little deep spot. It's all public water through there. And then you're by Crested Butte. That can't be all bad. Just a really fun town to goof off in, hang out, a couple fly shops, some guides, great skiing, good spring skiing there right now. And just a neat place to be, great scenery. You drive around Colorado, you'll just see, mind-boggling scenery out your car window. But this is a place called 4UR Ranch in southwestern Montana. It just goes from alpine, cascading rivers to meadows. It's got it all. The Gunnison, famous river, very wadeable. It's also floatable. It has per mile just a jillion fish, rainbows and browns. It gets a run of kokanee. And if you really kind of looking for something new and different to do, Black Canyon on the Gunnison has these, you get an outfitter, you load up a mule with boats and rods and nets, and you clump down to the river. It's only an hour or so, sort of a walk with the mules. They take all your gear, you pump stuff up, and you have a couple days to float just some remarkable canyon country. Every inch of it is fishable. It's hard to watch your dry fly because there's so much scenery to look at, but it's got something for everybody. Good dry fly fishing, good nymphing, good streamer fishing, camping, scenery. It's a great trip. I highly recommend it. And so from medium to big browns, I should mention there are some actually monster rainbows and browns in this stretch. Your average fish is big, meaning 17, 18 inches, maybe 16 to 18 inches. And you're always going to get some 19s and bigger.
Hey, Brian, we had a question that is actually relevant to where you're at right now, which is question is whether there are parts of the Gunnison that are now actually considered private, including the water itself.
Well, yeah, that's a good question. And one thing that do-it-yourself fishermen should realize is in the Gunnison Canyon, there's quite a bit of private water, private property. But even if you float, you can't put your anchor down. So you can float through, but you can't drop your anchor and retie. You know, if someone makes a risky cast under a tree and loses it, the guy rowing's going, great, we're gonna have to float 300 yards before you get tied back on, because you can back row all you want, but you can't drop an anchor. So I would highly recommend, making sure on each watershed you get familiar with some of the local regulations and laws. And I don't know how those things all happened, but back in, water rights days and things like that, it's different, literally county to county, state to state. But even here in Oregon, I lived on a steelhead stream, and I owned it out to the middle of the river, wherever it moved. So sometimes I would gain like 5 acres because it moved way over to the other side. That would be the middle because it meandered over there. Then it would move back. But yeah, it's very complicated. I just say no before you go. That was a good question. And camping can be simple in dry, arid, places like this. No rain. Don't even need a tent. Didn't even take a tent. And then again, fishing hoppers and big stuff. It's really fun. Look at that great scenery. And yeah, it takes a little maneuvering, whether you do it yourself or go with an outfitter, running through these boulders. And I'm not going to cover all of Colorado. Like Wyoming would just take forever. There's so much water. But I really like the area up by Walden. It's kind of old Colorado. Doesn't have really any skiing real nearby. It's not a real famous old mining town. It's just kind of a ranching cattle country part of Colorado. And over the range is Steamboat, and on the Yampa River, I mean, that's a whole nother hour discussion. But Walden has these small meadow streams. Some of them are private, and some of them you do have to, hook up with an outfitter to get onto. But that's just all part of our fishing budget. What are you going to do? You can't take it with you. Fish it, spend it. And these are just great streams, and they're full of fish, not heavily pressured. And you're in a part of Colorado that doesn't have, a bunch of golf courses and condos and all that stuff. It's just old school ranching country and beautiful rivers. And I'm going to go back. You can see where they've fenced off a buffer between grazing cattle and the river. And so the willows have all come up, and it's good for the beaver and wildlife, and lots of moose in this area. But anyhow, here we go. Nice browns, huge rainbows. And in this area, the North Platte is right around the corner. So you've got the chance of these really, really big fish and nice fish in all these small streams. And by small, I mean 15 to 35 feet across. Nice wading streams like this. Just absolutely gorgeous. That evening, elk hair caddis fishing in, it's hard to beat. North Platte is a low gradient stream. You can see there's nothing, going real downhill here. It's long slicks, pools, low gradient riffles. But when you see an overhanging tree or some brush tight to the bank, it's always going to be good in that shady spot. And this is all float fishing. No real bank access in this area, but you go with a guide, you're going to catch some big fish and have just a blast. Look at that. No people around, big open country. Okay, we're already to Montana. Patrick, you're going to go to bed early tonight. Patrick's in Vermont, so let's see, the sun's out here. It's beautiful. Oh, that's nice. Anyway, Montana, we could spend hours and hours. It's another just great state. And if you just think about, say, from Billings down here, one of my favorite steakhouses is in Billings, and you just draw a line up and go over. All of that is world-class, lifetime of fishing. Dillon, Missoula, Butte, Helena, Great Falls, up to the Glacier National Park, over to Libby, the Kootenai River. This is all just great stuff. My grandparents were from Missoula, so that's where I went as a kid. That's where I learned how to fly fish with my dry fly purist grandfather. And then once I got my driver's license, I started to explore, out of the Blackfoot, Clark Fork, Bitterroot area. And I started to go up here by Butte, and I discovered the Madison River on my own before I was 17. And Patrick, did you know that when I was a kid and you drove up to Madison, you could go to a store and buy a packet of live sculpins, swimming around sculpins. And the spin guys would hook them with a split shot, and every cast was a big brown. And here I am with my dry fly purist background as a kid going, whoa, that's interesting. Well, that's when I got into streamer fishing, and there weren't, a lot of big streamers back then, but fortunately there was like a marabou muddler, and then the spuddler, and then others came after that. But all those big fish, if you've been along to Madison and you go into any of those bars, they got walls of all these giant trout all around the pool tables. And it was something to see back then. That was in around 1972 or something. Beaverhead's a great river. It's well known. There's tons of guides. Sometimes, to be honest, I'll drive over there and I'll see, 15 or 20 boat trailers at a takeout and think, oh my God, it's kind of pressured. But at the end of the day, I've forgotten all about that because we've caught lots of fish. And, it's not a giant river, and it's an easy row, and there's some bank access too. But, you might be a little disappointed when you see those boat trailers, but at the end of the day, you've caught a bunch of fish, and everybody else did too. And everybody seems to be happy. Got a lot of fish per mile, and they're big, beautiful fish. The rainbows up on top, browns and rainbows in the middle, and then browns down below. It's gorgeous. It's a twisty, windy, low gradient stream. It's just all good. Near Dillon, fun little town. But that's big sky country, middle of the summer, short sleeves, wet wading. Hard to beat. How much snow you got at your house, Patrick?
We're getting down to the last few piles, but I can tell you, you're killing me with all these photos, man. I think I am ready to go like everybody else.
I know, isn't it fun? It's so cool.
Well, I've been to a lot of these places, and I miss them. I want to get back.
I know it. I know. So, Craig, Montana, it's just a trout bum sort of mecca. And that's my raft. And, we take it over there. We do our own thing a lot. But, I have so many friends that live there and they're guides. So we always, pool the money and do a couple guide trips too. But, I've been fishing here for 40 years. So I kind of know what I'm doing, or at least where I'm going to go, and my put-ins and takeouts and where to buy ice. But what I like about the Missouri is it's just got everything, because you'll have a trigo hatch and the guides are on their binoculars so they can see the clients fly among all the others, and they go set, and it's just really super, super technical at times. And other times, they're promoting trout spay with streamers and swinging caddis pupa and things like that. So it's just really a lot of variety. And I would encourage anyone that hasn't fished this area, or even if they have, to ask around to the several fly shops in the area, because you can actually learn so much on the Missouri River that you can apply to fishing all over this country. internationally, from light tippet downstream presentation dry flies to mergers and every type of bug. You can get if you ask a fly shop, I'd like to go with a guide who will really be a good teacher and a coach, and you can learn so much in one day that would take you years and years on your own. So anyway, that's a neat thing.
If I could add to that too, I mean, I spent a lot of days guiding on the Missouri, and as a guide, I would always worry about, gosh, I know my dudes want to catch some fish, and you hope that you had a good day. I never worried about the Missouri because there were so many opportunities, whether it was nymph, dry, or streamer, around some of the islands or some of the flats or whatever, from the boat, maybe a place you could wade in a back channel or something. And you always knew that your guys were going to at least get a few fish over there because there was so much opportunity.
Yeah, it's really neat. The PMD hatch right near Craig, it's June and it's still, not early season, but almost early season. And those fish are so hot. You're fishing, 4 or 5 weight and 5X, 16 PMD to a little sip, and boom, and that fish runs like a steelhead. It's just unbelievable. These are all big rainbows from the upper part of the Missouri. And let's just cruise over the Madison. Now, again, I'm not going to drill down and give you every, put in boat ramp every season, every fly to use. This is just to encourage all of us to get back out after it. And man, can't come soon enough. So anyway, we all love the Madison. It's a little bit maybe being loved to death, but there's still miles and miles of great riffle water and tons of fish. And it's, again, one of those places where you see a lot of people, but when you talk to people, how'd you do? They go, oh my God, I did great. First I was fishing some midges, and then I went to this and that. And it's a good technical river with a lot going on. And, if you drop in at Kelly Gallup, slide in and just get Kelly going a little bit, it's usually pretty entertaining. Now his guides have really long arms, but those are still big fish. And I've actually fished it nearly all my fly fishing life, and I've yet to really catch a monster in the Madison, but I've caught enough 21s and stuff that, on a hopper, or 20s on streamers, but they're there. But I've got so many stories of, as a kid, fishing in cutoffs and Converse tennis shoes in the Madison with all the adults in the regalia of all of this puffy vest, fly boxes everywhere, and I'm just a kid with a Zug Bug nymph. But it was a great place to learn, and it still is, and it does have some big fish. The Ruby, again, a medium-sized stream, lots of private property, a few public access points, but it's a place just to say, just get a guide. I mean, take a guide, take a float. If it's a good high water year, now not so much in a low water year, the hatch is amazing. There's hopper fishing, streamer fishing. I tend to do really well on this sort of 16 to 18 to 19-inch fish. I don't usually catch a lot bigger, but I know they're there. But when you have action on every corner of the river, every log, if it looks good, it is good. And consequently, you can rack up some pretty nice numbers. If you know the Ruby River, it's near Twin Bridges, Winston Rods. Upriver, there's several really nice fly fishing lodges. There's day guides, but it's a river everybody has to fish in their lifetime. Would you agree? You're nodding your head. That's good.
Oh, absolutely.
To see if you're hanging in there.
Of course, man.
Well, look, these are those, 15 to 19 inches I'm talking about, but just so gorgeous. And, one's on an elk hair caddis, one's on a streamer, one's on a parachute Adams, one's on dry dropper. It's just all going on. It's really fun. Beautiful valley. It's a trout fisherman's paradise. And the Bighorn, that's world famous, has, it comes out of the dam cold. There's a nice float. My strategy on the Bighorn is a little different than others. I might get there about the same time everybody else does up at the dam, but I dink around up there. I fish, and I kind of let all the boats go in and go down. and I go really slow. And I fish all those back channels on the islands. I wade fish a lot of that. So a lot of the people that fish the bighorn never get out of their boat, and they just, it was just fine. I mean, you can catch a lot of fish, but I like to get out, explore the back channels, look for rising fish. And then pretty soon, most of those people are all halfway done. Then we might start rowing the banks and fishing normal, but we'll go slow. And we have to really look for the takeout because it's getting dark and we're covered in caddis. And we've switched flies through all the different hatches that have gone on all day. And it's just high fives and fun. And the bighorn's just an amazing river. It gets pressure, sure, yeah, but it's got a lot of fish. I threw the kootenai in because I know two outfitters, and they're fun guys. They're at all the shows, and you Google it, you'll find them. It's big. It's a big river, and there's no people. You know, it's again, you kind of have to know someone to really know how to get around. But this is sort of funny. Lower right hand photo, the person in the front of the boat was the actual horse whisperer that Robert Redford did the movie about and all that. So that's the original horse whisperer right there. Let's just jump over to Idaho. Okay, now remember, Wyoming was, wow, go explore, check it out, maybe get some of those guides that fish the North Platte or the Wind River that have those big fish, or get down to Colorado, hang out in those ski towns, have fun, fish, great family experience. Montana, you know, traditional big name rivers, Madison, Big Hole, Jefferson, Gallatin, on and on. And, you know, now we're going to just sort of do our road trip through Idaho. And it's, you know, it's a kind of long, skinny at the top and fat at the bottom, but you've got iconic rivers, you know, Silver Creek, Henry's Fork, you know, just these places that fly fishing is like, it's an epicenter. There's a lot of other water too, you know. Up north, you've got these cutthroat streams in the panhandle up there, and then, man, the southwest, and there's just water everywhere. There's great lake fishing too. But well, here's the South Fork of the Boise, and it's interesting because it's sort of in the middle of nowhere. It's not really on a tour route. You don't see a lot of out-of-state anglers there. Boise and Sun Valley, Idaho, those people kind of converge there. But it doesn't have the draw to bring in California, Colorado, or Eastern or Midwestern anglers. It's sort of in the middle of nowhere, but it's a gorgeous stream. Half of it is just a crack in the earth. And if you float it, once you initiate and leave the takeout, there's no stopping. I mean, there's no hiking out. You are committed to a float to get to the bottom, to the takeout, and hope you make it. And the other part, below the dam and down to that, is accessible with a dirt road. And it's you know, Boise's got several great fly shops and a lot of anglers. They put some pressure on it, but it grows a lot of fish. They get fairly big, and it's just a classic trout stream.
Hey, just want to add for folks that are watching and enjoying this too, we do have some questions that we will get to. I've also noted, Brian, as predicted, there were a number of questions that you have answered along the way. So I'll let folks know we're not ignoring you.
Okay. And so here we have the South Fork of the Snake, Swan Valley below Palisades. And, you know, this is another, if you ever, you know, you want to retire on a trout stream and not ever be bored, it would be the South Fork of the Snake, because it's got cutthroat, monster browns, rainbows, it's got hatches, got some just interesting fishing. There's a lot of outfitters here. They're great, and places to stay. It's just an amazing fishery, and I could go on for hours, but I'm lighting a fire, maybe giving you an idea, something to Google. And if you haven't fished Swan Valley, South Fork of the Snake, you got to do it in your lifetime, because every one of those little riffle drop-ins right in there, there's 2 fish, 3 fish, 5 fish. It's loaded, and it can be on fire. No, it's like any other river. It's not on fire every day, or they'd be extinct. But when it's on, it's amazing. There's some great PMD hatches, these nice big cutthroat around top. That one, you can see a little elk hair caddis right in the side of his mouth. So that's fun stuff. Middle Fork of the Salmon. Now, here's a river that might have like a national caliber title, I would call it, in my opinion, the best multi-day float trip in the country. You've got several rivers in contention. You got the Deschutes, you got the Rogue River, but there aren't that many multi-day camping trout trips. And the Middle Fork is known for its amazing scenery and wilderness. Now, it's hard to get a permit if you do it yourself, but there's lots of great outfitters. And I just say, go with the outfitter. You know, they make these Dutch oven biscuits and you'll have all the best salmon. And you just have to like get from the boat to a chair and let them do the work. It's hard to accept that if you're kind of a busybody ex-guide and you want to help, but they will shoo you away and make you sit down and give you a cigar, say, just stay out of our way. But you got amazing canyon. It's almost dry fly fishing all well, it's 100 miles and it's a week. So 6 or 7 days of dry fly fishing for cutthroats. If you put on something subsurface, there's a chance to catch bull trout, wildlife. And I could go on forever, but an organized outfitter trip is not that expensive. You'll almost save money doing it because it's a week-long trip. You probably would have spent more money staying home. And, you know, it's a great family trip because they can take about 16 people per trip. And it's, oh, that sounds like a lot of people. You see a boat here and a boat there. It's not bad at all. But when you come back to camp and all the boats pull in, the bag boat had already set up all the tents, got the kitchen going, got the chairs out. There's hot springs. But again, dry fly fishing for 6 or 7 days in a row, it's pretty darn fun. All right, next door is Oregon. And well, that's where I live. But anyway, this is Crane Prairie, really cool reservoir near Bend and Sun River. And you know, Oregon combines, well, coastal fishing, salmon and steelhead's huge. But then we've got lakes and rivers. We have spring rivers that pop out of the ground, like the Metolius and the Fall River and others that just pop out of the ground, full on rushing trout streams. Other types of spring creeks and desert rivers. So there's a lot of variety. And so East Lake is one of those places. It's a place for stillwater fishermen to really go challenge themselves. Now, it's not that super hard, but you get a glass calm day and a Calibadas hatch, and you got to have the right fly, the right tip, of the right presentation. And then the nymph fishing has a whole nother bit of science to it. So places like East Lake have long time, myself included, anglers who like to go there every year, May, June, July, August, and fish the hatches, fish subsurface, look for ants, that sort of thing. And just challenging, but there is a chance of catching some very, very big fish. I always tell people if they fish the Calibadas hatch, don't go with 1 or 2 flies. I mean, on a windy day, you'll be fine with about anything. But if it's glass comb, you're going to go from this, like from left to right on the bottom, hair wing done to a thorax style, to a hackle staff cripple, to a CDC biot body done, to et cetera, et cetera. You need a ton of stuff because you will eventually find a fly they like, but it won't come usually as the first fly you put on. So here's some Calibadas nymphs, and I keep some kokanee that I catch there, and I just love to eat them. And also, it's a good way to do a stomach sample, or I go to the fish cleaning station, and I do a little dumpster diving in the garbage can, and I pull out a big brown trout pile of guts or a rainbow, and I cut open the stomach. What I've always found very interesting, especially about the Calibadas hatch, is depending on the time of year, like you're usually in the early part of the season, which is late May and early June to mid-June, the Calibadas nymphs are a little bit bigger, almost a 16, but they're uniform. Everyone is the same shape, same color, et cetera, et cetera. And that's why getting your fly dialed into that hatch cycle is great. Now, later in the year, they'll be a little bit smaller. They'll be 18s and stuff, but that matters there. That's why it's fun. It's not just throw out atoms and hope. It's good fun. But browns and rainbows, very, very you don't go up there and to do well, just go goof off fishing and just drift and pull a woolly bugger. You really have to get kind of scientific, know the depth, know the retrieve, light tippet, small flies at times. Good, challenging fun, and a pretty place. Good place to beat the heat too. It's 6,500 feet, so usually you have a cool nights in the summer. Another multi-day trip, highly recommend, bucket list. Everyone needs to do it in their lifetime. And it doesn't have to be during the salmon fly hatch, because those are my salmon fly boxes there. That's very popular. It's a world famous salmon fly hatch, but there's all sorts of caddis. There's tons of mayflies, there's hoppers, there's other things to do. And the multi-day trip is usually, my favorite is 3 nights, 4 days. And if you do 2 nights, 3 days, it's still a great trip. Even a day trip's fine, but as an overnight experience, friends and family, yourself or an outfitter, you can't beat it. Even if, if people go with you that don't fish, they're going to have a great time, because more people float the Deschutes just to do scenery and whitewater than to fish. So everybody will have fun. But it's part of, like when people think of Oregon and they're from Vermont, they go, oh, you mean lots of big green trees and lumberjacks and the Oregon ducks and the ocean, right? I go, yeah, that's 1/3 of Oregon. The other part is mountains and then desert. And it's very dry. So the Deschutes probably averages in this area 10 to 13 inches of rain a year. It's a little oasis of trees along the river. Then it's dry. It's very dry. Sagebrush country, great weather in the summertime. And I go back. This was me in 1976 with my friend Dick Carter. If you remember seal dry waders, oh, I'm going to show you with my arrow. You see what that is? That's duct tape, because you always use it on the inside and the outside of a rip in your seal dry waders, and it was good, gold if that. I remember back in the day when we had so much hair we could hardly keep our hats on. 1976, good fun. Well, this is near the White Horse Rapids area of the Deschutes, and that's just trout habitat. It's just fantastic. Half of the river is in this area is on the Warm Springs Indian Reservation. The other half is BLM, but you cannot fish out of a floating device. So probably 80 or 85% of the river is unfishable, and that's just a trout sanctuary. So you fish on islands, you fish on the bank, on gravel bars. It's tough wading in places. So, it's sometimes if you can get out to some big boulders, wading waist deep or deeper, you might find more fish. So it can be physical, or you can take it easy. Camping spots, great views, the sound of the river at night, fishing caddis until dark. It's great fun. The old Chubby Chernobyl for the Golden Stone, still very hard to beat. They haven't wisened up to it yet. And this is kind of what puts the Deschutes, besides steelhead, on the map. And that's Terra narcis californica, the big stonefly, the big salmon fly. And it's in black, brown, this reddish brown, several sizes, but they're big, and trout love them. And that's a big draw to the river. But come in July after the hatch and do those floats, and you'll do more prospecting with nymphs in the day, and then having caddis dry fly action in the evening. Well, this is when you hit it just right. The trees are covered in salmon flies. They crawl down your neck. They get in your food. Well, they're totally harmless. They're just a big hunk of trout food, and they're clumsy. So when a gust of wind comes along, and boom, there goes 5 in the river, and then sploosh, sploosh, sploosh. It's just great. Golden stones on the right, a little more athletic, and maybe even a little more of a longer hatch cycle than the salmon flies. And trout love them. Maybe they like them a tiny bit more. It's hard to say. But one thing about the Deschutes red side rainbows is they have great colors, big spot patterns, and they're very dry fly oriented. And the river itself is just one rapid riffle pool after another with overhanging vegetation on the banks, some very tough banks, steep sometimes and tricky, and there's a few rattlesnakes. But still, as a 3 or 4 day trip, chalk it down to something you have to do in your lifetime, and then maybe come back in late August, September, October, and do a steelhead float. And here's a nice fish. It's a 13-incher. So, that's not a monster, but Deschutes fish are really strong. There's no hatchery fish, and you'll probably catch some bigger ones. You probably won't catch one over 20 inches, maybe not even 19. But if you catch a 16 to 17 inches, when you look at it, you'll see, God, I got a 20-incher, because they're just fat and strong, and they look and act bigger than they are. But it doesn't really matter. I always tell people, if you've done any carpentry and you've used a tape measure, if you cut a board at 16 inches, 16-inch fish is a great trout. And as soon as our fly fishing community embraces 16 inches and not 20, we can all live a lot easier life. But that's what I'm talking about, wet wading, summertime fishing. Now, Jeff is 6'3". He can sort of fall, stagger, swim out to that little reef and fish the outside. And he's running probably a Prince nymph, knowing Jeff, and an indicator. But that's hard to fish. You might be able to park your raft or something right on that rock. I'm pointing at it, doesn't do you any good, on this rock, and maybe get your anchor down, someone hold the boat, someone jump out, maybe fish that. But what you can see all through here, holy cow, this is all just great water. There's 3 or 4 hours of fishing right there. But wading can be a technique that can give you an advantage. Well, this is sort of funny. So the Metolius River near Sisters, Oregon. I was talking to a friend the other day, and he said, "What are you doing?" I said, "Oh, I'm putting together my program for FFI, and it's on Western Trout." And he goes, "Are you going to put the Metolius in there?" I go, "Well, I'm thinking about it." He goes, "Well, you can, because nobody's going to catch any fish anyway." And the Metolius is heartless. It's a tough river. It's gorgeous. It's beautiful. It's the rumor, well, not the rumor, the saying is it's the most beautiful river you'll ever get skunked on. And it is. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's a little bit like the McCloud River in California. Same beautiful rainbows, but it doesn't give them up easy. Time on the water is critical. There's no guiding allowed. You got to go down to the campgrounds, get a spot, learn it, fish it, hike the trails, watch for bugs. There's a couple fly shops like Fly Fisher's Place and Sisters and the fly shops in Bend that can help you out. But don't be surprised if you catch 2 or 3 fish a day, and when you come back to the campground, people go, "My God, you really did good," So it's gorgeous. It's got wonderful summer weather and lots of hatches. The big green drake there is the most famous in June. And then, oh no, what are these? A bunch of big streamers. Well, unlike a lot of other places, the Metolius has an intact, very good, healthy bull trout population. And it's catch and release, of course, but you can catch them year round. But I like them after the kokanee come up the river in the fall and through the winter and into the spring. They're big. State record's 23 pounds. And this is all public water. And it's mostly streamers, but I have caught a lot of bull trout on a size 16 pheasant tail. So they take a little bit of everything, but that's a belly full of spawning kokanee right there. But then besides bull trout, it's back to bugs. And it's ants and all the mayflies, caddis and stones. And you see some of the big October caddis for 3 or 4 months into February and March. And it's interesting because it pops out of the ground a full-fledged river. It doesn't have it has tributaries down below, but it comes out of a little meadow, boom, a big spring, and it's almost fishable right off the bat. And then it gets bigger and bigger as it picks up a few tributaries. So it's got a fairly even flow. It's got a fairly even temperature year round. And whether the trout like it, I would think they do, but the bugs love it. And so you have major hatches, and it's a place to go, spend some time, learn the river by each 100 of yards. You don't learn the river in a day. You learn a few pools and get into the cycle of stuff, because 300 yards upriver, there's some golden stones, and 300 yards downriver, there's some PMDs. And where you are, there's tons of October caddis, but they don't overlap. You have to learn these zones. It's very, very interesting. It takes time. But if the bull trout are your sort of big home run fish, it's the rainbows that steal your heart, because the coloration, spotting, they're unbelievable. And again, the McCloud River in California has got these similar, really beautiful rainbows. And you got to jump up to Alaska, but even sometimes in Alaska, you don't get, this sort of spotting and coloration. It's just really, really impressive and fun. And these will be 12 to 16-inch fish on an average. So they're not super huge, but by the time you've maybe even spotted one and changed flies 5 times and gone to 6X, 7X, and finally caught one, the reward is greater than just catching a big fish. It's a really amazing spot. There's a trout spay and fishing the tail out for bull trout, camping along the river. Very nice. Hosmer Lake. Now, this is just a little lake. I threw it in for the heck of it, just because the scenery's so good and I've had so much fun there. Got to get there early. There's a lot of paddle boards and kayaks coming out now, but it's a place you go up to do like perfect stillwater techniques. You got Calibadas, you've got midges. It's at about 6,000 feet, so it stays iced over until May. But and it's a gorgeous spot, and you can catch these big brook trout. It's also got cutthroats. Oh, there's a Calibadas nymph. Rainbows. And there's a Calibadas adult, a dun. And it's a place where you can just do, this is like a step-by-step ABCs of stillwater fishing. Calibadas nymphs, emergers, cripples, duns, spinners, the whole thing right there going on in a beautiful, beautiful location with the south sister of the Three Sisters on the left, Broken Top, Mount Bachelor, and Mount Bachelor ski area is a little farther to the right. So this is on Century Drive, which is up between Bend and Sun River, and really cool spot. Oh, it's got an ant hatch too once in a while, and you need big ants, not little teeny tiny Henry's Fork ants, the big stuff. And then every fish in the lake is up on top going nuts. Hey, Patrick, guess what? We're almost done. I tricked you. Okay, let me go into Eastern Oregon a little bit. That's where I live. And no, I'm not going to give away a lot of top secrets. I'm not even going to name a lot of names, but I'm going to show you a lot of water and a lot of fish. Now, Eastern Oregon is what, close to not much of anything, kind of close to Boise, kind of close to Portland and Bend, a long ways from Seattle, a long way from California. So this is lots of dirt roads, but some very interesting country, the Oregon Outback. Now, if you know where that Big Bend is and that river right there, you just see me somewhere and I'll buy you a beer, because these rivers are public. There's some ranch land, yeah, here and there, but a lot of it's public, BLM. You can camp, you can fish all over the place. More chucker hunters know this country than trout fishermen. But look at that crayfish. I mean, they get big, trout can get big. There's a lot of these are controlled by irrigation companies. It'll kind of run pretty strong in the summer, but in the fall, they drop the flows, they clear up, and there are blue-wing olive hatches, tons of caddis, small streamers. There's a lot going on. I kind of forget the names of all these places, but they're on the maps, they're on Google Earth. If you see a long squiggle on a map, it's probably a pretty good trout stream. You got big, healthy, fat fish. And some of these rivers, if you look at that lower right-hand picture, there's the truck, there's Jennifer, there's good oxygenated water, and there's there's rainbows and smallmouth bass, the same spot. I don't know too many places where you can do that. It's pretty fun. And they're rich with bugs. So these are mostly mayflies, but there's some midges and caddis pupa in there. And there's a caddis rockworm and just a fly. But I mean, really pretty interesting. Look at this, how this red on this midge, probably a ascending emerger, pupa. There's just a bug, fly. All these are caddis pupa, mayflies. There's a snail. So they are getting well fed. Right now, as of today, there are squala adults popping out. That's a big female there. You can see their great big egg sac. And that's why a lot of the patterns are tied with this black foam egg sac on the back. It's famous with the squalus. They're a smaller stonefly, an inch and a quarter, inch and 3/8, but trout love them. So we've got tricos on some of these rivers. You think you might have to fish the Missouri or the Bitterroot or other famous rivers to get into a good trico hatch, the Clark's Fork. But a lot of these streams have tricos. There's a swarm of them on this little stream. And this is how I get around. Got the truck, very good 8-ply tires, small boat, ready to either float, fish some lakes, but it's desert, outback country. But look at that gorgeous rainbow, 17, 18 inches, just a super strong fish, never been hooked before, it looks like. A few skeletons here and there, but you're out there. Blue-wing olives are common, very common in the fall, which would be sort of hunting season out there. It's more known for deer, antelope, and elk hunting than fly fishing. But you'll have these nice blue-wing olives. The big ones like that are in late February, and there's smaller ones, usually a size 20 and 18s. These are a 16. The 20s and the 18s are all fall, all winter, and it's a major bug for the trout. I usually get kind of on the glassy water. I usually use comparadons, but I also use a lot of CDC and hackle stackers, more sparse, very trim presentations. A little bit of high vis for those winter days when it's hard to see. And the nymphs, of course, very deadly on big fish. And then pale morning duns, they're coming out in late May, all of June. Great bug. I think just trout love them. They must taste good. They love them. Various nymphs. And this stuff's so common. Everybody's got all this stuff. Got them in your fly box. Just have it with you when you wander around. Here's Jennifer with 2 big browns. Desert river that has big fish. And, you can go all over the world on a very nice trip and not catch a fish that big. It's nice to know that they're out there on public water. And again, like I said, almost more known for mule deer, elk, and antelope. But it's fun when you can drive along and pull over the car and look at 8 nice big bucks just sitting there together. Parts of central and eastern Oregon have the black drake. If you want to sound cool, it's Siphlonorus occidentalis. But what's really cool is they come out, they're a swimming nymph, so they don't cling and emerge and become a dun on the surface of the water. They crawl and swim to the shore and come up the bank like a stonefly and then hatch out. So you don't have a big dun emergence, but a lot of them blow in the river and or the spinnerfall brings out more dry fly action. But when they come out, it's in mass. Now that picture on the left is the side of a house, but the whole house was covered in mayflies. And so was the golden retriever and the cars and the trucks and everything was covered in mayflies. You just imagine on that little stream when they came out swinging like a soft hackle pheasant tail. Oh, unbelievable. Some of these little streams are again a little oasis of grass and trees along the river, and then just flat sagebrush and rimrock canyons. There's wild mustangs that live their whole life out in this area fighting each other and in territorial disputes. And it's all rimrock country. No matter if once you start fishing from the Nevada, Idaho corner and then west into the vast area of Eastern Oregon. For an example, Harney County has the town of Burns, and it's the 7th largest in size county in the country. And it's the 7th least populated county in the country. So you have a massive county, which they all are big out here, and no people. It's a great combination. But you have rimrock and big rocks. People think, well, that must be like Arizona or New Mexico or something. But no, that's Oregon with the lumberjacks and the tall trees. But half of Oregon is very dry, very small population. But it's camping. There's a few hotels here and there, but mostly it's camper, trailer, and camping. So, and then these little desert spring rivers that are fun. They'll just blow you away if you can find them. But they're on Google Earth and they're on the map. Look at that, you can see a beaver starting a little beaver dam right there, and it's backed up this small creek, and that's my buddy Todd Moen of Catch Magazine. He's gonna fish for that little riser with a small hopper. Here's another river. I kind of forgot about this. Smack dab in the middle of Eastern Oregon, beautiful stream, tons of public access. And this is fall. I love it in the fall because it's hoppers or parachute Madamax or just small attractor dry flies for nice rainbows. You know what? I fish here quite a bit. I may have seen a fisherman or two in my life, mostly nobody. It's really neat. That's parachute Madamax. Doesn't have to really match a hatch. These fish are, to be honest, they're pretty aggressive, and any kind of big, interesting dry fly will do the job. This is actually a midge hatch. It looks like it should be caddis or PMDs, but it's actually just millions of midge. A lot of these rivers fish great in the winter. Don't want to get stuck out there. And in that time of the year, of course, it's midge season, and you just a way to work on the midge game. It's usually a little parachute dry fly and some 7X down to a zebra midge or any other kind of midge pupa, any emerging midge pupa, and fish for rising fish, because they're generally making a little rise form, but they're taking midges just under the surface film. And it's just great. We have good action. And this would be a typical midge hatch in the Oregon desert, where there are millions, I don't use the word lightly, millions per day hatching out. And what I really like to look for are the clusters. There goes one, here comes one. And these midge clusters are why the Griffith's gnat and flies like that are popular. These are little parties and they're having fun, but the fish will come up and just take that whole group in one bite. There's a Griffith's gnat in the mouth of that rainbow. Here's another river. I'll even give you a little tip. It's west of Baker, Oregon. Now, it's a lot like the chalk streams of England without the England. It's got the mossy beds, the slow current. In that photo right there, there's 100 trout. There's some 5 inchers and 8 inchers, but there's also some 14s and 15s. It's 3-weight, 6 and 7X. Match the hatch, dry fly fishing, and you only need about 200 yards of river to fish in a whole day. Not a lot of monsters. It's 35 CFS, but they're wild rainbows, hill country, ponderosa pine and rim rock, no people. Now this river, you want to watch out for snakes. This is a snaky place, you can tell, just a basalt lava rocks, hot country. It's a fork of a fairly well-known trout stream in Central Oregon, but it's not well-known up here. I've never seen another angler, another boot track, etc. And this is collimular basalt. And Patrick, I always thought they should use that word in like a breathalyzer test. Sir, please say collimular basalt. Memorable.
Yeah.
Well, it's cool stuff because, the lava, flows and then it gets colder and it goes into these crystallized kind of columns. It's beautiful stuff. Well, this river comes in and during spring runoff, it really hits hard, hits these cliffs hard and scours out these deep holes. So when you come back in the summer, the fish are pretty easy to know where they're going to be. Riffle, deep pool. Yeah, that's where you want to fish. And they're not monster fish, but there's going to be some 14, 15, 16-inch fish at the biggest, occasionally larger, but I never oversell. But a lot of 10 to 14, which is just, hey, got to admit, just your basic American trout stream fish. And it's 3-weight water, gorgeous scenery, no people. Now, you do the San Juan Shuffle in this creek, and you won't have any fish come up to you, but you'll attract a lot of these water snakes, which is a garter snake. But it's kind of spooky when you see a lot of these all around you and stuff. So it's just a different kind of experience. But, when they're wild or native fish, and there's no boot tracks, there's no trails, there's a lot of water out there. It's just a matter of us finding the time. A lot of us have the gear, and it's just mainly concentrating our efforts. What do we want to do? Let's do some, fishing in Crested Butte. Let's do some fishing in Casper, Wyoming. Let's go to, the cutthroat streams in northern Idaho, and let's fish that. The Oregon Outback. It's a lot on your plate. It's a lot to take on, but if an angler starts in their 30s, they're going to have, 40 some years of good trout fishing. And I wouldn't look at this as a giant buffet. It's too much. It's just one chunk at a time. Get familiar with it. Go with friends and family. Have the all-American road trip. It's absolutely great. Patrick, it's all you.
Well, I got to insert my own couple comments here too. Something that you said early, which I think is worth underscoring, is that you can go to a lot of different places in the world and you can catch trout, but you don't have the breadth of public opportunities that are this accessible any place you could possibly go. I mean, yeah, it was 30 years ago. I lived in the back of a truck and was a classic trout bum and drove around and lived on a side of a river here for a week and here for a week. And you can still do that on the cheap.
Yeah.
And all you need is a little bit of time and, so the ability to clamp a vise to your steering wheel to crank up some bugs and, a place to sleep. And, as you were going through this, I'm like, maybe I could do a reprise of the 30-year ago adventure and do this again. I mean, but in the mean, so that's a really important point that I think this is, it's basically in our backyard and just takes a little bit of time. I do think that there are going to be a lot of people watching this who are going to end up at their therapist with fear of missing out disorder. So, I mean, I know you're trying to get everybody excited, but I just want to go. It's why I don't watch too many fishing and hunting TV shows, because if I can't do it, I'm just disappointed. So anyway, but Brian, that was awesome. So got some great questions. So let's get to it. So and some of this will back up a little bit, but we'll see if we can hit them all. So from Gary Green, who I know you know, how will the drought in Colorado, Wyoming impact fishing this year in your estimation?
Well, it's not uncommon to have some low snowpack winters anywhere. And those places, I'll take Colorado first. You generally want to go early. You're gonna hit some regulation changes on most of the rivers to be off the water at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock or closed. So early is May and June, maybe the 1st of July. And then after that, you just have to watch. It can change. Low winter can be augmented by a lot of rain and that sort of thing. Places in Wyoming, there are some tailwater rivers that are, obviously controlled by dams, and they regulate the flows. And those are pretty safe bets most of the time until there's 3 bad winters in a row. Then you do see some warming waters and things like that, maybe more algae growth. But there's also high altitude fishing. High elevation. Altitude is airplanes, elevation's on the ground. And you get up around 7,000 or 8,000 feet in Colorado and you've got beaver dam, creeks and lakes. There's always something to do. But some of our blue ribbon trout streams are in that 3,500 to 5,000 elevation level, and they can be affected by low water. And so it's morning fishing, earlier season, and then fishing tailwaters with dams that, good or bad, make for good fishing.
Yeah, and outside of Colorado and Wyoming, I mean, obviously, Montana's had some issues as well, and kind of depending on where you're at, they may, the Fish and Wildlife agencies may change the regulations for outfitters and for fishing in general, hoot owl hours.
Exactly.
And actually, there was a related question, which you hit on a little bit from Harlan Hausman. Hasn't the Bighorn had some water issues the past few years, and any idea how it is now?
Yeah, I would definitely check with the shops in Fort Smith. There seems to be some issues going on with raising the level of the water up above the dam or something like that, and it's having an adverse effect down below. Some people say no. Some people say, yeah, it could be potentially bad. I don't know. I haven't been there in a couple of years, so I am interested in finding out what's going on. And I'm sorry I don't know the exact answer to that, but I would check in with the fly shops along the river and get their take on that.
Here's a really good question, which I'm not sure that I would be willing to answer this. We'll see how you fare, Brian. But it's a great question. What are
Oh,
your,
you know what it is? They don't believe these are from the dollar store glasses because they're so handsome.
oh, you mean these ones too?
Yeah, yeah, right.
Great question. What are your top 3 picks for wade fishing?
For wade fishing, well, I like the Big Hole in Montana. I think it's like an Arnold Palmer designed golf course. It's just meant for beautiful walking. It's got, not too many giant cliffs and rocks. It's great. Actually, even though it's slippery as heck, the Madison is a great wade river, and you can fish that in several different spots besides the main river from Slide Inn down to Ennis, but also above Slide Lake and other places. And I can't give away anything too top secret here, so I would say, I'm trying to think of something a little off the wall. Oh, some of the cutthroat streams in northern Idaho and Silver Creek is pretty fun to wade, There's a ton. There's just a million. And in Oregon, I could list a dozen. In Idaho, 5. In Montana, 10.
Right.
There's a lot. And if we're talking more about mid-sized rivers, not big float rivers like the Madison, then you go to Rock Creek and other rivers like that are tributaries of tributaries that then get smaller and smaller as they move up the watershed.
Yeah, and I think some of the best wade fishing are probably on some of those smaller creeks that are susceptible to getting loved to death too. And you got to kind of find them on your own, certainly. All right, so we do have some questions about finding specific guides and outfitters. Is that something would you want folks to email you about that, Brian, or you want me to throw it at you now?
Well, you can throw it at me now, and I'll probably have a general answer for all of it. And it's because we're all human, and it takes a certain thing to pique our interest about either someone or somewhere. And so sometimes you can look at someone's website and you see a lot of poorly handled fish or fingers in the gills, and you kind of go, no, maybe not. That's not my style. And if you see someone who's more maybe promoting dry fly fishing and stuff, you're going to see maybe that's more of a finesse person from a traditional preference. And so I think whether you meet them face to face at a fly fishing show or their website or on Instagram, I think we already judge to a degree, a little bit about their style. And so that's the first stepping stone to making a guide choice because, to be honest, everybody kind of fishes pretty well and they'll get you into a ton of fish. But it's nice to have almost a buddy in the boat as opposed to just a guy drilling you closer to the bank, closer to the bank, closer to the bank. So anyway, lay the question on me. There's my caveat.
So, well, one is more general, which is whether from Keith Atkinson, whether there's a website to find guides and trips. And I think you kind of answered that, which is, you fire up the Google machine and, look for good guides and out. In fact, you just addressed it right there, right? That's a good way to go. And obviously you also even showed some really good books that you can look at. And I mean, I think for a lot of people, maybe not for everybody, the fly fishing journey isn't just about the time on the water. It's figuring stuff out. And of course the gear, right? You can't have enough gear, right? That's all a part of that too. But I don't know if you wanted to add to that at all, just, how to dig up intel.
Yeah, well, there's obviously Google search, but think about it. If someone like Yellow Dog or Flywater Travel, Frontiers, or the Fly Shop has gone to the trouble to put guides and outfitters on their website and in printed material, well, they're pretty well vetted. They know they've been around, they paid their dues, they're solid. The thing that I find funny about guiding, and I'm an ex-guide, Oregon, California, Alaska, and that is you might have 25 years experience, know a river like the back of your hand and know behind which rock, and that's the guy you want to go with. But, and someone's going to not like this, but you can be a graduate from Montana State University and have a ball cap from a fly shop and get a job that summer with 2 years of experience fly fishing total, and they charge the same as the old pro. So how do you find those guys? Well, maybe Yellow Dog, the fly shop, Flywater Travel, and Frontiers know them, because they're not going to send you out with someone with 2 years experience. They're going to send you out with someone with 20 years experience. And so that's one way to probably make the the search a little easier. And then going back to just people that are interesting, people that you like what they say and how they hold fish, and they do the keep them wet thing and all that. So you'll find people who maybe do your sort of style. And but it's not hard now with Google, Instagram, Facebook. It's all out there.
Any specific recommendation for an outfitter on the Deschutes for a multi-day float?
I can't answer that question because they're my friends. and, so, and again, the Deschutes is a real.
Come on, choose your favorite child. Choose your favorite best friend.
Yeah, right. If someone's been in business over 5 years, that's not very long. But if they've been in business over 5 years, that the Deschutes works you as a guide, because you have these long shuttles on bad roads. It tears up your trucks and tires. It's a rower's river. You can't just go, like some guides call, from the put in to Tip City. You got to go through rapids and know where to go, and you have to know where to anchor to accommodate the wading ability of your clients, because some of it's nasty boulders, some of it's nice gravel bar. So it's sort of a tough river to guide, and I think the people that have stuck with it are all going to be pretty good. It's very competitive. One of my favorite outfitters says, in the first year, my customers come for the fishing. The second year, they come for the food. So they have great chefs. They're fun. I love them all. There's a lot of great guides on the Deschutes. I'm sorry I can't name names. That wouldn't be fair. But, there's the Oregon Guides and Packers Association, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife, and the BLM only issues so many permits. And there aren't many bad guides, to be honest.
All right, last question from Chuck Ballard, which is maybe a little hot spotting, I don't know. Was that the Powder River shown near the end?
Oh, very interesting. No. No, it was not. I actually have fished the Powder in the, I think the North Fork of the Powder in Oregon, and caught some big fish, but I did not show a picture from there, mainly because the access is so bad. The last time I went there, it was 4-wheel drive to go downhill in the canyon, and we blew up the front wheel drive of a 4-wheel drive. It was 105 degrees out, and I took off all my clothes except my underwear, and I hiked out like 15 miles to get to a road where I could hitchhike to get a truck in that could pull this truck out. So I didn't put it in there because I don't want people to go to some places and never come back. But the answer to the question was no, but great question.
What I feel like I learned from your story that I'm pretty sure you made up is that we should all go fish the Powder River.
You won't even find it.
Probably not. Well, Brian, that wraps it up. As I said when we started, it's been an absolute delight to have you provide Fly Fishers International with these episodes. Thanks to our members for making all this possible. If you're not a member, join. And if you want to see more Brian, make sure you invite him to your local club or chapter and have him give one of these awesome presentations and take him out for some of the best fishing around. I am looking forward to coming out and visiting you, Brian, at some point, or at least getting out of the water someplace, somehow. But I cannot thank you enough for taking the time to do this.
You're very welcome, Patrick. It's been really fun. It's been nice to hang out with you, and you're doing a great job with the organization. I'm not just saying that. It shows. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I appreciate it. So huge thanks to everybody that joined us. And Brian, we'll have you back next year for season 3, right? We'll get some new episodes.
Great. It's a good Tuesday.
Awesome, man. All right. Take care, buddy. We'll talk soon, I'm sure.
Thank you. See you later. Bye.
Have a good night.